Well, welcome back. Now, I had an email last week from a gentleman who asked me about watch refinishing, polishing, etc. And it was a great email, a really good topic that I'm happy to cover. A contentious one because there are two very different schools of thought on watch refinishing and polishing. Now, I'll go through both of them, and it really will depend on what camp that you sit in as to whether you agree with my thoughts or whether you don't. I'm not asking anyone to agree or to disagree with them. I'm going to tell you the way it works from a factual point of view, and you can decide where you stand on the issue. Now, watch refinishing. First of all, let me make my own personal stance clear. I like watches in original state. In other words, I very much appreciate a watch that is as it left the factory, warts and all, marks and all. If there are any sort of condition issues, I'm happy to put up with that. For me, it's kind of like birthmarks. It's natural. That's the way that it is. Think of watch refinishing as a little bit like cosmetic surgery or a little bit of Botox, if you like, on a human being. What happens when a watch is refinished is it goes back either to the manufacturer or it goes to an independent watchmaker, stroke refinisher, and that watch will be refinished. Now, refinishing means polishing. So basically what happens is that the case is polished, the bracelet is polished, and there are many different levels of refinishing. There is from light polishing to a light refinish, which means that maybe you've got one or two scratches on the back of the clasp and your refinisher will just remove those light surface marks and pretty much leave it at that. That's just what I would call a light refinish. And then you get a full refinish, and this is where the watch is basically taken to pieces, the movement is removed, the sapphire crystal is removed, everything is removed, and each part externally is refinished and polished to the highest possible degree to the ability of that individual refinisher. Now, the moral of this, to much degree, is the fact that there are some people who are really good at refinishing and some people who are really not so good. I've seen some watches that have been refinished and polished by, well, I can only describe it as amateurs. The refinishing has been awful. All the lines have been lost. Everything has been done hideously. And as far as I'm concerned, they've killed the value of the watch. At the top end of the spectrum, if you send your Rolex back to Rolex and you see how that comes back refinished, the watch will look like brand new. And they look absolutely fantastic. They look tremendous. And that is the very highest level of refinishing. That's refinishing at its best. Now, there are a lot of independent polishers and refinishers that can do the job just as well as Rolex. I have one particular guy myself. His refinishing is absolutely first rate. It's top drawer. Now, what does it do to the value of a watch? This was one of the questions, and it's a very difficult question to answer. I can only really answer it by trying to give you some examples. Now, an old car salesman once said to me, you don't sell dirty cars. And the same goes with watches. If you're in the retail business, the general public from a watch buying perspective, they're looking in your shop window, they're looking for watches that look like new, that are clean, fresh, tidy, etc., etc. From a purist point of view, from a collector's point of view, they're looking for watches that haven't been refinished. So you've got two completely different markets, and it really depends on which market you are trying to attract or which market that you're in. So the vast majority of retail outlets and shops and watch dealers will refinish or polish their watches to some degree, myself included, because of the old adage, you don't sell dirty cars. And that generally works with watches as well. And I can give you a couple of examples, or one that really comes to mind. I had a Rolex in my shop, an 18 karat gold Rolex Submariner, and the watch had been in my window for about a fortnight. It was completely original. There was quite a few little minor scratches and marks on the watch. The sides of the case were, quite dull because it obviously lots of light surface marks and usual sort of wear and tear. Sat in my shop for a couple of weeks. Not one person asked to see this watch. Nobody. No interest in the watch whatsoever. It was online. No interest whatsoever. Not interested. But I liked the watch because it was showing a real nice patina that I really appreciated myself, and I knew that a lot of watch aficionados would probably appreciate. I took the decision after a couple of weeks, look, this watch has got to be refinished. It's not attracting any interest. Sent it off to my refinisher. It came back looking like a brand new watch. It was in the shop window for less than 24 hours and it sold. So what's the moral of that story? Well, from a business perspective, I think it tells its own story. There's two very, very different schools of thought, and you will either be in camp A or camp B. Now, the problem for watch dealers is, and what they face is that camp A, and let's call that the watch aficionados camp, the people who like their watches totally original and unpolished, camp A is much, much smaller than camp B. Camp B is huge. The people out there in the world, that the watch buying public, who want to buy watches that look great, that you put them on your wrist and they look like new, you know, this is 98% of the watch buying public. We go back to camp A, you know, where you've got the aficionados who appreciate watches for what they are, their history, everything needs to be 100% original and unpolished. It's a very, very small camp. And you wouldn't really, well, I can tell you now for sure that if you was to run a watch business that only sold watches that had never been polished, I'm afraid you'd end up having to go back and find a job, because you wouldn't be selling many watches. Which is kind of unfortunate, because as I said, I happen to be kind of in camp A, but I very much have a foot in camp B as well from a watch retail perspective. I must admit, when a watch comes back to me and it's just been refinished, you know, I unwrap it and I look at it and I think, wow, that looks fantastic. I'd wear that watch myself now. Whereas before, maybe it looked a little bit tired, and if I just put, you know, a nice suit on to go out for the evening, perhaps I wouldn't want to put a watch on my wrist that looked as tired as it did previously. Perhaps it's more of a jeans and t-shirt watch. I don't know. It's for everyone to make up their own decision as to which camp they sit in. So the question about valuation, does it devalue the watch when you refinish it? Well, the answer to that, in my humble opinion, is absolutely not. And as long as it's refinished properly and it's refinished well. And the reason that I believe it doesn't devalue it at all, subject to proper refinishing, is the fact that that watch becomes far more saleable to camp B. Bearing in mind that camp B represents probably 98% of the watch buying public. So you would certainly perhaps put off the aficionado that sits in camp A by refinishing your watch. But the caveat to that is that you're going to approach a lot more of people in camp B, because they're the ones that predominantly are regularly buying week in, week out, day in, day out. So that's the way the watch world works with refinishing. Certainly there are always other areas that we could touch on when it comes to refinishing. For example, if you found a 1980s gold date just or whatever, you know, any watch you can think of really that had never been polished and it was really, really nice and showing very light signs of wear, you know, I would always leave that watch alone. But I think I'm probably more talking about watches that are relatively modern. Certainly if you buy a watch from the mid-1990s that's looking quite tired, you are definitely going to get a better price for that watch if it's been refinished and it's now looking like new. From a retail perspective, that's always going to be the case. Now, I understand that there's going to be people out there that don't agree with what I've said. They will say you should never, ever refinish or polish a watch. And I just want to make it quite clear. I totally understand where you're coming from. I totally understand and I totally get that. But what you would also need to understand from the watch dealing perspective, I'm telling you the way it is and the way it just happens to be. From a factual point of view, watches in original state will often just not sell, and ultimately from a business perspective that just doesn't work for the dealer. Hope this video has been interesting and has helped you understand a little bit more about watch refinishing and polishing. Thanks for watching, and as always there'll be more videos soon.